Hi, I'm Dr. John Neufeld, and you're watching Back to the Bible Canada. Welcome. Delighted to have you join me. I've been talking about reasons to give thanks, and I've been looking at Psalm 37. And today I want to take some verses. It's a 40-verse psalm, and so I'm not going to have the time to look at all of it. And I spent some time looking at the first 9 verses the last time I spoke on this. But I'm going to take you through verse 10 and some of the verses through and encourage you in your own Bible reading to spend a great bit of time in Psalm 37. I think what it'll do, it'll give you a more thankful spirit than you've ever known before. However, this one, as we go to the latter verses of Psalm 37, I want to talk about God's protection. Now, there's a reason to give thanks. All of us know that the world that we live in is not a safe place, and we do everything that we can, however, to try to be safe. So we lock our doors. Everybody does, right? And we try to stay home after certain hours. That is, if you're smart, you do. I remember a number of years ago, I was driving along the freeway, and up along the freeway came an Amber Alert, and it described a 2-year-old that had gone missing. Well, my heart immediately sank when I saw that, and I just simply, as I drove, asked the Lord to watch out for that 2-year-old, and then only to find out that a very short period of time later that the police actually found her body. And there was a 22-year-old man that was held in custody because of what he had done, and I couldn't even begin to imagine the grief the family and the community that knew this girl would have felt. How suddenly you go from having this wonderful, delightful daughter in your house and feeling safety, and then feeling so quickly that there was no safety at all, that all of the barriers that you had put up of protection have been broken down by an evil man, and that this has occurred. You see, it's an interesting thing to live in the land that we do. On the one hand, I always encourage people to give thanks. Give thanks for the government that we have. Give thanks that we are ruled by laws. Give thanks that we live in a relatively safe land. Give thanks for the bounty that we have. Our tables basically overflow. Very few of us are going without. We live in a land of wealth. And at the same time, when we see an example of the one like I have just given, we might think to ourselves, how can it be that such profound evil and such profound blessing can be superimposed on one another and can happen at the same time? And in essence, that's what Psalm 37 is all about. We have a number of promises there. Psalm 37, 10 and 11, it says, "In just a little while the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant peace." Now, there's a wonderful promise. And you might immediately also, you got your ear tuned to that and you'll say, didn't Jesus say something like that? Well, yes, in fact, he did. Matthew 5, verse 5, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And, when you think about that promise, it does seem the most unlikely thing, does it not? The meek, there's been a lot of work that's been done to understand the term meek, but in terms of the way that we understand it, it's most unlikely that if anyone is going to inherit the earth, if anyone's going to grab the bounty and become wealthy from this earth, the meek seem to be the people in the last of the line. And yet, that's exactly what Jesus promises. So look back a little earlier at the psalm, and I'll give you a number of other promises. Verse 7, "Be still before the Lord, wait patiently for him, fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil desires." See, so, what some of us say, well, that's right, because in the end, the person who does evil is going to come on his own head, and that's true. We have some sayings like that. What goes around comes around. So you're going to start doing evil, it's going to come back, and it's going to visit you as well. And yes, that sometimes happens in this world, but you and I should be wise enough to know it doesn't always happen. And so there is that. So I'm going to come back to that again. So a couple of other things is true, and that is to say, sometimes it's true in this life that what goes around comes around, and sometimes it's not. If you look at verse 16, we read about the abundance of the wicked. In verse 21, it speaks of the wicked man who borrows and doesn't pay back. leaving his lender with a devastating loss. You know, the wicked man is described in this psalm as wealthy. He's cheating. He's robbing others. He's breaking laws. He's bending the rules. He cares more about getting his own way than he cares about the people that he has destroyed that are left in his wake. You know, in Psalm 73, Asaph describes the wicked in this way. And listen to what Asaph says. He says, they have no pangs until death. Their bodies are fat and sleek. They're not in trouble as others are. They're not stricken like the rest of mankind. Therefore, pride is their necklace. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes swell out through fatness. Their hearts overflow with follies. They scoff and speak with malice loftily. They threaten oppression. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongue struts through the earth. Now, you know, so just in case you believe, you know, that only righteous people ever make it ahead in this world, it ain't so. The Bible tells you it's not so, and your experience, if you think about it, also tells you it's not so. Sometimes some very evil people have gotten ahead and gotten everything they wanted and left a string of bodies in their wake, and up till now have not paid for that. Now, that's an amazing description, but there's more. According to David here in Psalm 37, in verses 12, 14, and 32, the wicked stand poised to persecute others, and they destroy the righteous. They think nothing is going to happen. Now let's go to verses 12 and 13. The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him, but the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming. So you got God sitting in heaven who's mocking him. God, the eternal one, is looking and saying, you know, you've almost run out of road. Your time is almost, you know, this very night your life will be demanded of you. That kind of language. I already have stamped your ticket. See, that's what's happening here. There's a day of judgment. God is arranging that. And then we come to verses 14 and 15. The wicked draw the sword, bend their bow to bring down the poor and the needy. They slay those whose way is upright. Their sword shall enter their own heart, and their bows will be broken. Now, maybe David, who writes this, was thinking about some personal examples. When David was a younger man, he was being persecuted by King Saul. David had on a number of occasions an opportunity to collect vengeance on King Saul and actually kill him, but he refused. He believed that it was not his right to kill the Lord's anointed. In fact, so he said, you know, God will take vengeance in due season. It won't be of my hand. And that's what David actually saw. There's this ill-fated thing that King Saul did in his battle with the Philistines that led to his defeat on the battlefield and ultimately falling on his own sword because he knew the Philistines would come and molest him. I mean, he died a horrible death in the end. The sword that Saul wanted to use to kill David was turned onto Saul himself. I mean, maybe that's what David is thinking about, or maybe another thing in his life that's something like that. But David did have time to recognize that there were times when the wicked had their comeuppance more quickly than they would have imagined. God simply acted in due season and brought them to an end. Now to verses 16 to 20. Better is the little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholds the righteous. The Lord knows the day of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever. They are not put to shame in evil times. In the days of famine they have an abundance, but the wicked will perish. The enemies of the Lord are like the glory of the pastures. They vanish like smoke. They vanish away. Now, you might be reading this and saying, but is that really true? Is the Bible promising more than it seems to deliver? Is it really true that those of us who are righteous have an abundance in times of famine? And for me, that's a personal question. My extended family and my family history has an experience with famine. My parents were born in the former Soviet Union at a time when, after the communists took over, they took away all of the land from all of the farmers. My folks were farmers in the Ukraine, and suddenly they went from having abundance to having nothing at all to starvation. My father's older brother starved to death. My father's father, that is my grandfather, was taken away by the communists as being a bourgeoisie, and because of his Christian faith as well. And he was put to death. He was actually tortured to death. So in the time of famine, they experienced nothing but famine, even as my father would tell me about his mother gathering all the children around in a barren home, which did not even have enough to heat the home, in which she called her children and simply said, "Now we will pray." And so that's what my father remembers. Now, one did die of malnutrition, but all of the others actually lived to an old age. God did deliver my entire family, and I was born in a land of abundance because my parents found a way here. But taken just straight up, it seems to us that when we read Psalm 37, that there are aspects that we might read and that we'll say to ourselves, "Oh, wait a minute, it didn't actually turn out that way." And if you think even further, you might say, well, it didn't turn out that way for Jesus. He was nailed to a cross, and it didn't turn out that way for his apostles because they all died a martyr's death. I mean, you might look to yourself and say, is it really that way after all? So the question is, how do we understand what we've just read? I mean, what do we make of verses like that that seem to promise things that our experience tells us just didn't happen? So the answer is found, I think, at the beginning of verse 18. The Lord knows the days of the blameless, and their heritage will remain forever. Go forward to verse 27. Turn away from evil and do good. So shall you dwell forever. Look at verse 29. The righteous shall inherit the land and dwell upon it forever. You catching that? Forever? Verse 37. Mark the blameless and uphold the upright, for there is future for the man of peace. There's a future for the man of peace, and we've already known how long that future goes. Remember the word? Yes, forever. Forever. So you've got to think about all of that. The future must be a part of the forever statements. Now, I know that there are a number of theologians that will argue that the Old Testament doesn't have a clear view of life after death. They will argue that, yes, in the Old Testament they spoke about Sheol, which was the dwelling place of the dead, but it was shadowy and it was not fully understood. And they'll often quote verses like Ecclesiastes 9, 5, and 6, which says, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Their love and their hate and their envy have already perished, and forever they have no more share in all that is done under the sun." So they'll say, that really is the view of the Old Testament about, life and death. It's not until the New Testament that we really get a different perspective. I think that's untrue. First of all, from Ecclesiastes, what I've just read, I'll say this. Ecclesiastes is the story of the man who lives under the sun. From the perspective of earth, from the perspective of just human reasoning, that's what we come to. We live for a while, it seems vanity, and then we perish and we're never remembered again. But there are more passages that we need to understand. Again, I've been mentioning Asaph in Psalm 73. And Asaph said he had almost lost faith. Remember, he saw the prosperity of the wicked, the strength of the wicked. He said, "My feet had almost slipped." And then Psalm 73, verse 17, Asaph says, "Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then I discerned their end." That is, their final end, their eternal end. I saw something in the sanctuary of God that God revealed to me by revelation that saw that the wicked are in slippery places. I wouldn't want to be them, says Asaph. God revealed to me something about eternity. See, this is what we have. Now, this idea that eternity is in view is found throughout the Old Testament. And if you look for it and you pay attention, you'll find it quite frequently. For instance, there are words in the Old Testament get repeated in the book of Genesis, found in Numbers and Deuteronomy as well. And the words are gathered to his people. Gathered to his people. So for instance, Genesis 25 verse 8, we read, "Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people." Now, I know that there are theologians that say that only refers to a common burial cave. You're gathered to your people, and that is, you're put in the same burial ground as your people were before you. You're gathered to the burial plot of your people. They'll argue that's all that phrase means. It means a family tomb. However, I'm going to say that can't be the case. Because in reading Genesis 25, we find that after Abraham was gathered to his people, when that had happened, we are told in the very next verse, then he was buried. First he's gathered to his people, then he's buried. So it doesn't refer to a burial tomb. In fact, in the book of Joshua, chapter 2, verse 10, speaks about the generation that lived with Moses, and here's what it says. And all that generation also were gathered to their fathers. All that generation, that is, they weren't all put in the same tomb. They were gathered to the place where their fathers had been. There's a gathering place on the other side of the grave. That's what's behind those words in the book of Genesis. And by the way, I sure hope that there's some, pastor or Christian leader that shows up at my bedside when I'm dying and reminds me that I'm about to be gathered to this great company of those saved by Christ waiting on the other side. There's a community that I'm about to enjoy, and that I'm not going on a lonely road into the abyss, but I'm gathered to my people. See, it's a lovely, lovely phrase. In fact, in Matthew chapter 8, verse 11, Jesus understands it that way. He says, I tell you, many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. They'll be at a massive banqueting table where the people of God gather to eat with their king and to rejoice in him. Now, there are a number of other places in the Old Testament that speaks about the hope of eternity. In Job 19, verse 26. Remember, he's suffering so terribly. Job says, and after my skin has thus been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I will see God bodily, is what he hopes for. Psalm 23, verse 6, David says, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever, he says. And in fact, Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, Daniel writes, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. See, I do know that the clarity with which the New Testament addresses what will happen to us after we die, that clarity was not yet there in the Old Testament. But David, by using the word forever over and over again, as we've seen in Psalm 37, has a clear indication that the books are righted in eternity. That is, for believers, there needs to be developed in our heart a deep longing for and a hungering after what God has prepared for those who love him. See, in the New Testament, this idea that David has, that, the righteous will inherit the land, in the New Testament, we're told what the land is. When we inherit the earth, it means there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and the righteous will inherit the new earth. You see, I do know that Peter tells us that this earth will be destroyed, but God will raise up an earth like unto it, but without any suffering. It will be a perfect earth, and we will inherit it. It will be an earth which is full of sights and sounds and smells and tastes. It will be filled with experiences, and we will experience eternity bodily, just like the raised body of Jesus. So yes, we will inherit the land. And by the way, I really try to make that as personal as I know how. I was born in British Columbia. I like to say I like to live all my life within sniffing distance of the ocean. But I like the mountains as well. I love the place where I live. I want to say that, I will inherit this. This is my land. It belongs not to the unrighteous. This land belongs to the righteous. God gives it to those who put their hope in him. I'm staking my claim here. It belongs to me for all of eternity. That is the hope that the New Testament offers us. David already gives us that implication. Now look, I know that the land that we now live in at the present hour has a lawful government, and I should give thanks for them, and I do. I am thankful for the prime minister that God has given us, and I ask God to bless him and his family. I do that, but at the same time, as I said at the beginning, I weep that we are also a nation that's filled with evil, with abortions and the abusing of human life. But I will inherit the land. That's the point. It's for this reason that David tells us to turn away from evil and do good. He says, evil men and women are going to flourish for a short time, and it's going to be brief. It's going to seem for a moment that evil is oh so rewarding, but it is not. Although the righteous people suffer, they will live in eternity. And I'm skipping here to Psalm 37, verses 35 to 37. Listen to David. I have seen a wicked, ruthless man spreading himself like a green laurel tree, but he passed away, and behold, he was no more. Though I sought him, he says, he could not be found. Mark the blameless and behold the upright, for there is a future for the man of peace. Now, it's fascinating to me because it's a temptation that we have that when there is a powerful individual and they have their own way and people fear that individual, that they loom so large on the horizon that we can't imagine a world in which they are not occupying that central place. But David says it so well. He passed away. He was no more. I mean, he was away from the horizon. I looked for him because I couldn't imagine a world in which he didn't dominate it, but in an instant he didn't anymore. That's what we're supposed to meditate on. Don't you see that there is all of those that seem so large and imposing will soon be no more. Don't fear man in whom is only the flesh. See, and again we say, don't trade today for tomorrow. You know, today is indeed a brevity of life. And to that, to the righteous, I want to say that God says three things. And here's just simply putting Psalm 37 together. There are three promises that we should concentrate on. Verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Those desires that are in line with godliness, every single one of them will be fulfilled in you. You will not be denied of one of them in eternity. That's the first thing we learn from Psalm 37. Is there reason to give thanks? Yes, there is. And now the second promise. It's found in verse 6. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. See, this is it. God knows. In the end of the day, the things that you longed for when you longed for justice will indeed happen. See, God knows, God watches, be patient. And here's the third promise, verse 9. Evildoers will be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord will inherit the land. See, remember that. And then to David's final words in the end of this psalm, verse 39 and 40. The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in times of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him. He saves them. See, that's the whole point of the Christian faith. We need a Savior. We need someone to deliver us from times of trouble, and we need someone to save us from our own sins. Look at it again. He delivers them from the wicked. He saves them. Why? Because they take refuge in him. So understand that every one of us wants to remain safe. And the question is, where is that place of safety? Where is it found? Where is a refuge to be found? I remember years ago having a conversation with a woman by the name of Mary Thiessen. Mary was at that time in her life working in an inner city, a very violent place where she was often being threatened, and it was never sure whether or not on one of her visits in which she would be ministering to people that she would return home safely. I remember saying to her, Mary, how can you ever continue to stay in this situation? And I'll never forget her answer. She said, any believer who is at the center of God's will is in the safest place imaginable. And for those who are out of God's will, what they think to be a place of safety is a place of great danger. It's important for us to understand what reality looks like. That's what I'd like to give you with. Do you want to remain safe? And if you do, you'll have to ask yourself, do you want to remain safe in this world? Because there is no safety in this world. The days are ticking by, and soon the ravages of time will break you down. And when people look for you, you will be no more. You'll be gone. See, if your safety is found in any place in this earth, you're missing it. But if you find your refuge in God, if you put your hope in Him, let me tell you, throughout endless ages, people will look for you and find you because God will have sustained you. He has prepared for you an eternal dwelling place and also an eternal purpose. See, that's the good news. And at a time of the year where we set aside time to give thanks, it's important for us to remember these very things. Let's give thanks to God, for He is a great God who has made great promises, and His promises will not fail. Who is in a more favorable position than those who put their hope in the Lord? Don't you feel blessed? Don't you feel overwhelmed with the riches that are yours in Christ? For surely those riches will never pass away. May the Lord bless you. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and continue to meditate on the goodness of our God. Amen. Thank you for watching today, and I want to ask you to make sure that you hit the like button and also subscribe to this channel so that you can receive any further notifications of all the videos that we prepare for you. Thank you so much for being a part of Back to the Bible Canada.